In this program, we're going to be using the getLine function to get a first name and a last name. We will be able to break it down into individual parts, but we're not going to do that in this video as we've done it in another video. What we're going to do then is we're going to calculate to see if a integer that we put in as a string variable is actually an integer. And we're going to be doing that using a function called isAllNums in there. Then in our next video, we'll go character by character to break down exactly how to go and do the character by character to change it from uppercase to lowercase. So here all we're going to do is get something that is a character or a string that we're going to use as a number. Remember, if you were to do something like this, see out, enter a number. Now we haven't put in any variables yet. So let's go and put in integer number equals 0. And then we do cin, of course, number. And I always do that wrong. Always, for some reason. I'm just so used to doing cout. Where is autocorrect when you need it? And then let's do cout the number is. Depending upon the system, you may get a strange number, but in all probability, you're going to get a 0. So let's see what happens when we type in AB. Let's look at different things. Let's look at different scenarios. So the first one, of course, if we type in 50, that works perfect. The next thing is, let's type in 5A. Well, now the number is 5, but the problem is we only got 5, and we should be telling the user maybe the person meant to type in a 0 for the A. Now let's just type in AB or A5. So now the number's 0. So now we have a problem. We need to do that. So remember, there is a thing called cin.fail that you can use as well. But we're not going to worry about that right now. So let us use, in this particular case, we're going to use, we're going to make number a string, which sounds kind of redundant. Then we're going to enter a number. Then we don't need this. So we're going to do getLine cin, and we're going to put it in number. So now let's put in a regular number just to make sure that the getLine is working. Now the problem is this is a physical string. So this is not going to help us in here. So there's a function called STOI, which is a string to an integer. So now what we need is an integer, and we'll call it num int. And that has to be 0. So we can't do anything with the num int unless we know that we're actually doing a total number. So in this particular case, we're going to create a function a Boolean function called isAllNumbers. We're going to pass in a string, and that's all we need to worry about. So let's see if we get our infamous thing here. I don't know why sometimes it appears and sometimes it doesn't. Carlos, here's a great research project for you.
What do you want to do?
Why the little tooltip here doesn't show up when sometimes it does.
Okay.
So I'm not sure. It's just being very mean and rotten and ornery, and I don't like it, and I'm not going to stand for it anymore. So we'll do it the old-fashioned way. So now what we need, we'll just call it num string, whatever we want to call it, doesn't really matter. So what we need to do now is we need to go and actually check it character by character and check to see if any of them is not a digit. So first thing is we need a Boolean for, we'll just do it is all num. Now it's not a good idea to make it the same as this. I don't even know if it'll compile because we have a function called all numbers, so we really probably don't want to do that. So we'll just make it all num, and we'll set it to true, and we'll just, doesn't really matter whether you set it to true or false, but let's think negatively and set it to false. So now what we need to do is get the string length of the string that we're sending in. So we need integer, and we'll call it string length. So the first thing we want to do is set the string length. Now, yes, I know that you could technically go integer string length equals string length of num string in here. Yes, I know. I do not want you to do that. That's, although it's acceptable, it's really not recommended. It's best to have another variable in there. So we're going to do the string length equals, remember you start off with the string, which is num string. You put a dot, and that should give you all of the wonderful functions. So length, do not forget the parentheses. So now we know how long the length of the string is. So if it's 500, the string length should be 3. So I, just for the heck of it, start out, we'll just do cout length is string length. And this will help you, if you do this, this will help you if something doesn't come out right to see what's going on. So now what we're going to do is do our for loop for integer I equals, remember, start at 0. I is going to be less than the string length. And then we're going to increment I. So now what we're doing is we're going to check it. So we can do it one of two ways. We can check to see if it's a digit to keep going, or we can check to see if it's not a digit. Basically, we just want to check for the first digit we find that's not a digit should end the for loop. So what we'll do here is if, and I'm going to put it in English right now, if we have num string of I is not a digit, then we want to set the flag. Then set flag. So we'll use this now as our comment in here. So you can see this is telling it. So what we do to do, if the way you check it is digit, we'll check to see if it is a digit. But that's not what we want here. Let me make sure I have it. So what we have to basically say if, and we're putting a exclamation point. This is basically like saying if num a string is not a digit. It's kind of backwards. It's if not a digit of num string, then we're going to set the flag. So here we're going to set the flag. And that's going to be then is all num equals false. And we'll put this here. That should, so we have a issue. Oh, okay, now I see why it's not indenting. There we go. So this should match this here. And boom. So the if would never happen if we put it in here. So now it's checking to do it. And then at this point in time, we don't really need to do anything in here. We can, at this point in time, we can do return is all num, or we could have just done return false. You know, remember that I addressed there's always a million different ways to do something. So what's going to happen, like I said, we don't really need this statement in here. I'm putting it in here to make it a little bit clear. So let's just look at both of them and you choose your way. I would do this. I wouldn't put the is all num equals false because it's really not all that necessary. So let's go in here. At the last statement we need to do is return true. So basically what's happening here is we're doing the string length. We're going for the string length in here. We're checking it character by character. The first time we find a character that is not a number, we're setting the flag to false and we're returning false. Remember, you can return in the middle of a function in there. That's perfectly acceptable in here. If it passes through here, that means everything here has worked out just fine. So now that means it's true. So let's go back up in here and we'll put in a little trick to save you a little bit of coding. C out, and again, don't do this in your coding, but this is a error checking thing in here. C out is all numbers, and we're going to do number. And let's see what happens in here. So we're going to put in 500 first. So let's see. We're checking our function to see how that works. So the length is 3. The number is 501. The 1 means it's true. Now let's do 50A. We should still get a string length of 3. Okay, the length is 3, and now we have a 0, so that means that it's not correct. Now, why did it say 50A? It's because we're printing the string. So the first thing we need to do is put an if statement here. If is all numbers and then of course we will do something. which is in this particular case, we're going to convert it to a string. The way we do it is just do, we have numInt equals, and STOA is string to integer. What are we converting to an integer? We're converting number. And then we're going to go cout your number multiplied by 2 is, and again, this is error checking, so it's okay to do this. Number times 2. So you're saying, why in the world are you doing it? Well, it's, number one, not the answer you think, to confuse you. I see I have an issue here, and that should be numInt, and that makes sense. Because I want to make sure if I type in 75, I get 150. I want to make sure the number's being converted properly. So that's the reason why I'm doing that. And remember, error checking is extremely important because when you submit the program, you want to make sure. So here, if we type in an invalid number, it should never get here. So we'll put, in this particular case, else cout invalid number. I highly recommend you don't do anything like putting in you moron you or anything like that, because when you make it live and you forget to take that out, you will probably get a phone call. Then you have to blame it on Calvin for doing it. So, this guy must have, I left my desk for a minute to go to the bathroom, and I saw Calvin typing something on my desk, so he did that. That was a joke, so don't all laugh at one time. All right, anyway, we're going to go back to running the program, and let's see what happens.
You didn't put the else?
I did put the else. It said invalid number.
No, but you didn't have to type the word else?
You are a genius. Yes. Thank you. I was too busy tooting my own horn for my funny joke that nobody laughed at, which is why you don't see me on late night TV. Because I think I come up with witty stuff, and then nobody laughs. So much for that. I'm not doing it again. All right, let's try it again. Well, actually, apparently, I don't have to type the else because I didn't type in it and it was there.
Compiled it. Yeah.
So, however you want to get it to work, who knows what's going to happen. All right, so actually what will happen is if I didn't do this, it would, if it was a number, it would print this, then it would just go in here and print invalid number. Because the else here overrides it, so in this particular case, it's just going to execute that block of code as if there was no parentheses or no brackets. So let's enter 75 and see if we get 150. And length is 2. Multiplied by 2 is 150, and the number is there. All right, now let's do 50A. And length is 3, invalid number. The number is 50A. All right, so that works pretty good. So now we need to, the number is, in this particular case, we should be printing out numInt. Because it's always going to be printing out numInt. All right, so let's try it here. Let's see what happens, what numInt does. If we don't do it right, let's do a new line here. And let's do a new line here. And run it again. We'll do 50A. Length is 3, invalid number. The number is 0. So that works. So what you would do now, you would need to put this into a while loop. So do, and then while, and then you can put whatever Boolean you want in here. So what will happen is you would do enter number, get line. You would check to see if it's all numbers, and then you would have need data equals false, else blah, 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 blah. And I like to put in need data equals true just to be on the safe side, and that will make you do it. So let's do that real quick. So we need a Boolean, and we'll call it need data equals true. So now we're going to do a do. And we can leave it down here, else. While need data. And we still have a red squiggly line. I'm not really sure, so let's see what I'm missing. And the do really needs to be up here. So let's see. Oh, you know why? Because idiot me didn't put in while. All right. So those red lines, as long as they can be annoying, it's so easy to forget something. So now let's make sure that it stays in this while loop in here, invalid number. You typed in a character, or whatever you want to put in there. And you could actually return the character if you wanted to, but that's a little bit more than, because you can't return a Boolean and a character, so you would have to do it several different ways that you can do it. One of it could be done in a structure in there, but I'm not going to make it any more complicated than it is. So that way you could return both true, and you could return whether or not a character was a culprit in there. So let's go and see if we're missing anything. So let's go and run it and see what happens. We'll start off with 502. And length is 4. The number multiplied 2 is in there. And entering number. Alright, so looks like we may be stuck in the loop. So let's see, while need data, you mumble in here. And the reason is, yes, need data equals false. So that will take care of that. Let's run it again. And we'll do 502. And length is 4. Number multiplied 2 is 1004. Number, okay. So that looks good. So now let's try it with an error. Okay, length is 4. Invalid number. You typed in a character. So what you could do you typed in a character, and then you could, at this point in time, just do, it would be, actually we can't do that. We have to do that in the is all numbers. So we would have to return it. You could do it down over here if you wanted to, in here. But we're not going to do this over here. If you wanted to return the invalid character, what you could do here is you could return in a character and put it in as a just put it as a character, pass it by reference, and put it in there if you wanted to. I'm not a real big fan of changing things in there, but you could do that way. So this looks pretty good. So it's going to make you keep typing in the character. So we have in here, in here. So the length is 4. So let's comment this out. We don't need it anymore. And it's always good to have the comments in there. So that way, if something happens and you want to go back to it, you're good in here. So what we're doing here is we are getting a number, and we're going to check to make sure it's all numbers. If it is, we're going to convert it to a number. Here we're multiplying it by 2 just to make sure that we can. And then we're going to go need data is false. Here, if it's not, we're going to say, hey, we have an issue here. Then what we're going to do here is keep doing it till you get the need data. So again, you could, just to be on the safe side, different teachers will tell you different things. My personal opinion is 1 extra line of code is definitely not going to hurt your program. So doing multiple calculations of the same thing might be an issue, especially if you change one and don't change the others. But to me, this guarantees you that you're in good shape. And here, can never mess up. So now we're keeping this going. We're keeping this going until we get in a regular number. So let's just type in. We just keep doing A. So invalid number, enter a number F, 500, boom. And then we'll cave and do 500. So that works out good. All right, so we are done with this. So before I close the video, any questions going once, going twice? Carlos, comment on you. You always have some kind of awesome comment. Have we stumped you? I guess so.
Professor, can you go down a little bit on the program?
Yeah, as soon as I get my mouse to work.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, I will put this as a CPP file and post it in Canvas. So
okay.
I'll take care of that for you guys. All right, so let me save this. That takes care of this.